Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new, welcome to the channel. My name is Santosh, and on this video we are going to be building an admin panel using Flutter web to manage our Flutter application, specifically this app here, which is our complete Flutter e-commerce or shopping app. The features of our admin panel will be authentication using Firebase, basically creating an admin and login as the admin, and then we want to create our dashboard where we can have a summary of important information and have specific tabs where we can go there and access some information like the number of users and do some modifications. Let me try to log in because this is already working a bit, so I'll just try to show you how the dashboard is going to look like. So our goal is to have something similar to this, which is going to be the first stage of our dashboard, where here we can have the revenue, the number of products, the orders, a small graph representing sales for the past months, and top users. And here we are going to have separate tabs. For example, this is going to deal with number of users, number of products, orders, and all of that, right? So this is the goal for this video. I hope you guys are excited because I am excited. See you guys inside. Hello beautiful people. Well guys, here is some important piece of information. I don't want you guys to feel like you're wasting your time watching this very long tutorial, so I'm telling you right away that this video is divided into two sections, right? The first one is overview and explanation, meaning that we are not going to actually do the code because I already have the basic template where you guys are going to start from. Here I'll be explaining to you how things work and how you can get them to work on your particular case. We are going to start running or writing new piece of code from the minute 41, meaning that here we have the timestamps and the things that we will be talking about. If you are interested in learning this and how to implement them, you can watch them. If you're not, you can start from minute 41 onwards. And what's going to happen here is that I have the source code of this, so you can just get the source code and go straight to the minute 41 and start coding from that point onwards. On this video, we are going to build an admin panel to manage our Flutter e-commerce app. Again, if you're new to the channel, we have a Flutter e-commerce app. We just don't have an admin panel to manage that app. But a small side note is it's crazy how the last week I made this announcement that we are going to have a new video every single Monday, and right after I had this announcement, my computer just broke and it took me over a week to fix it. So that's why probably today is not even a Monday. I don't know what day of the week it will be when this video goes up, but still. With that out of the way, before we start building our Flutter web admin panel, which is important to let you guys know that this is a Flutter web admin panel, I want to show you guys first of all our app. Here we have it, and aside from showing you our app, I want to show you guys how to set it up. Imagine you're just starting today. I will show you how to go to my GitHub repo to get this code and how to set it up using your own Firebase project, so that we can start from that point onwards and you'll be able to have your admin dashboard for this application. Again, I'm going to give you this admin dashboard as a template. You can just change it and tweak it a bit to use it in a different project, on a different project, and that's the whole idea of this video, right? Perfect. If this is the first time that you're seeing this project, this is what we have at the moment. Not much actually, but here we have some products. It doesn't look that pretty. What I will do is probably create another video soon where we give this app a more honorable UI. But this is basically it. You can come here and select the colors, the sizes, and another thing that you can do is add to cart. Good, we already have that on our cart, which is good. Sorry for this. You can do a search. I think this works, or let's see. And it does work. So here we have our app, and this is basically what our end user is going to see. But we want to be able to take care of all of this stuff from our admin app, meaning adding products, adding brands, adding categories, and all of that, right? So you can click here, you have our products here on the cart, and you can just check out, accept, perfectly done, and you can come here and have a look at your orders, and here you have it, right? Good. This is the user app. Now what we are going to start doing is actually building the admin app, but before that, as I told you, I will show you guys how to set everything up. Perfect. Let's get started. So guys, the very first step that you'll want to take to follow this video, I mean, is first of all going to my repo and accessing the source code, right? And this is my repo. You just have to come here and copy or download the zip file, or copy this link and do a git clone on the folder that you want to get this project to work on, and this will provide you with this source code, right? I will basically assume that you know how to do that, how to clone a repo from GitHub. And after you have that done on your source code, or if you download this code, you're going to have something similar to this. You may find some errors, but that's nothing. You just have to come here to pubspec.yaml file and do packages get. That will fix the errors, because I made sure this is the working version of this code, right? So you're going to get something like this. Now you'll have to come here on Firebase, basically, and here on Firebase, what needs to happen, you'll have to create a Firebase project. I'll not do that because I believe that there are a lot of videos that are going to teach you how to create a Firebase project, and we did that over and over here in the channel. So you're going to create your Firebase project. Then after you create your Firebase project, something that it's important, make sure you don't forget to enable sign in with the email method. Here in sign in methods, this has to be enabled for the whole thing to work, right? Now having these two things, it's more than a good starting point. The last thing that you need to have now is the storage and Cloudflare store. But let's go to the Cloudflare store first, which is the database. So coming over here to Cloudflare store, you don't have to worry about copying nothing, none of this, because the way the application is structured, the way our mobile app is structured, this is going to be created automatically, except from the products, right? And this you'll have, unfortunately, you'll have to create this structure manually. So you can pause the video and take a look at this. Just have to create 2 products is going to be enough, and follow this structure. I said that you'll have to enable Firebase storage as well, because if you have a look here at our picture, this picture is stored on our Firebase storage, and this is how we are getting this link here. let's have a look at the Firebase storage. So here it's very simple. After you enable Firebase storage, you just have to click here to upload files, and you can download any image that you want to have on your project, right? And after you download or you have the file here, you can just click here. If you ever look, you can access the link here. Just click the link, and after having that, you just have to copy this link. So back to Firebase. When you are creating your project, because you'll have to do this manually. When you're creating your products, here is where you're going to paste the link we just got from the image. So just give brand, category, and make sure the fields are exactly like this. Let me zoom in a bit to make sure you guys will be able to see this, because you'll have to replicate this. Unfortunately, there's no way around that. For the colors, this is a list of strings. Featured is a boolean, ID of the product, name of the product, the picture, the price, quantity, if it's on sale or not, and the sizes. Again, you're going to have a list of strings, right? You just have to have 2 or maybe 3 products. It's going to be good enough. Good. After you have your Firebase structured like that, you almost ready to go. The last thing that we'll have to do is basically connect this Firebase project to your mobile app, right? I'm assuming again you have done that a lot of times and you know how to do it, but basically you have to do that because you need something called Google services.json. This is the file that we need, right? And when you start connecting your Android or iOS project to Firebase, you just have to have this file. For Android, actually, we need this file. And going back to this particular project, where you'll want to make a change is here. If you go to the Android directory, and then go to app, you'll see that we have this file. I don't know if you guys are able to see this, but Google services.json, this file actually is what connects this project to my Firebase project. If you want to connect this to yours, you'll have to delete the file you're going to get here and replace it with the one you're going to download from your own Firebase project. And this basically it's going to connect this project to your Firebase project, right? I hope you guys understood that, and I just assumed you guys already know how to do this. If you don't know, please make sure you're right in the comment section, or I'll basically leave some links in the description on how to connect, or just link a card here so you can learn how to connect your project to Firebase. But after having all of this, try running your app. And if you're able to get your app running, you're perfectly good to go. We can continue with our Flutter web section, where we are going to build the admin panel for this project. So I really hope you guys were able to follow everything I said up to this point, because from the next point onwards, we are going to focus more on building the admin dashboard for the project. So guys, what we are going to do here to make sure we have Flutter Web running correctly is having a look at the documentation, which is important, and see what we need to do to have Flutter Web running on our system. If you have Flutter already running, it's easy. You just have to run 3 commands, which is changing your channel to beta channel, upgrading your Flutter, and do Flutter config enable web. Don't worry, I will leave the link to the official documentation in the comment section, in the description section below. I'll just comment the commands that you need to use. After that, you just create your Flutter project normally how you would usually do, and I'll call this e-commerce tut for tutorial. And here you have your basic Flutter project, nothing new, right? Let's try to run this project and see what happens. And the command is going to be flutter run -d cron and see what we get. And this is the final result. If you have a look at it, nothing new. If you're a Flutter developer, you usually get this for your mobile apps as well. Let's start structuring our project a bit. I'll create new folder, call it pages. I'll create another one, call it widgets and services. And finally, let's create providers. Again, we have this so that we can arrange our files in terms of functionalities. Now inside of pages, let's create a new file. We are going to call it home page, and it's going to be the home page of our Flutter web. It's going to be a stateless widget, so we need to import flutter material.dart and create a new widget called home page. Right. Let's give it a background of white. Save the file and do a hard reload. Nothing changes because we need to call this from our main file. And basically we just come here, delete this widget and call our homepage widget from here. Import it and run it. Again, it's just going to be white, and this is what we expect. Right, what's going to happen here, guys, is that we're not going to build the UI of this project here because the tutorial would be extremely long. What I will do is I'll give you guys a starting template, right? Only the UI, there's no backend configuration for the starting template, and the link is going to be in the description section below. So what you guys are going to do is just downloading the starting template, and we can start configuring Firebase and setting up our authentication services and all of the other Firebase services together. So we'll just skip the UI part of this tutorial and go straight to the back end. If there's something you would like to learn about the UI, you can let me know in the description section below so that I can create a tutorial about that. Let's go to the back end. Now guys, after you get the template code, this is how your application should look like. You can go to users, you have this sample data, orders, we have sample data, the same for products. And the application is responsive. This is very important for web application to be responsive, meaning you can open it on mobile, tablet or desktop, and even ultra wide screens, and it's going to be responsive. Right, and here we'll just test different sizes and it's going to be responsive. The app's not going to break. Now what we have to do is connect our web app to Firebase, which is not that hard. Just select your project on Firebase, and we are working on the Flutter e-commerce, and here at the top we just have to add and select web. Give it a name. I'll just give it a random name here, and we are going to register our app. After that, you just have to copy this code here and go back to your application, and this is the code you just got for the template. Open up web and index.html and paste this just on top of main.dart.js. And to the pub/spec file, don't forget to add Firebase core and Firebase auth. Right, having this is enough to have your project running. Hello guys, well, actually this part of the video was done in the future after the whole video was complete, but for the original one I did not include the explanation of the Firebase authentication process because it's basically the same way you would go by authenticating your Flutter apps is the same way it's going to work for Flutter web. But then I realized maybe some of you guys are new to this and you would like to understand how things happened and not just seeing the final result. But as a side note, if you don't want to go through all of this, you can just go to the link in the description and get the Flutter web authentication, right? If you get that code, you'll get the base template of the app and all of the code to do the authentication already configured on the app. The only thing you'll have to do to get it working is changing the Google services.json file to your own project and have that working, right? But if you do not want to do that, if you have the basic template and from that point you want to build the app, I'll explain how you would go about doing that. Remember that you may see here some files that you do not have on your project, which is fine because this is a more advanced version of the project, right? First of all, you'll have to create the following files. Let me zoom in a bit to make sure you guys can see it. Inside of helpers, you'll have to create one file called constants, where you're going to define constants. Well, here for the moment you only have Firebase. You just have to call here final future Firebase app initialization is equal to firebase.initialize app. The new version of Firebase, this is how we are going to work with Firebase inside of our Flutter web or Flutter applications in general. So you will have a file and define the Firestore variable, the auth to do the authentication, and the initialization to initialize Firebase on your project, right? So create this constant files, this constants.dart file, and have these values or variables defined inside of that, right? After having this file, what you have to do, again, if you want an in-depth explanation, I'll link a card here where you can see how to do authentication using providers in Flutter. This is just a brief overview, right? Good. Here inside of models, don't worry about this. You'll create one file called user. Again, you may see things that you do not have on your project. Don't worry about orders for now. You just focus on user. And inside of user, it's a very simple class called user model. You're going to have three constants: the ID, name, and email of the user. And then you're going to have the private variables: ID, name, email. You're going to define some getters to access the value of those variables: name, ID, and email again. And finally, you're going to do this so that you can get data from snapshot, basically getting data from Firebase, right? And you see how this syntax changed. You have your snapshot.data, but you have to have this parenthesis before you have this here, right? So just define this and it's going to be fine. After having the models defined, you will come here to services. Don't worry about the orders. Create a file called user.dart, and inside of this is a class called user services. You're going to define here your collection and call it admins. What this will do is we are going to create a collection on Firebase, and the name of the collection is going to be admins because the users here for this particular app are admin users. You have a method to create new users, or basically create admins inside of our database, that takes three named parameters: ID, name, and email. And here we are calling firebase.collection, which is this .doc.set, and here we are setting the data that we want to have on Firebase: name, ID, and email of the user. Here we have our second method, which is called update data, right? We're not using this right away, but still we'll have here update data, which takes a map of the type string and dynamic of values. Again, we have Firebase firestore.collection.doc value ID, And basically when we call update data, inside of this value ID we are supposed to pass the ID of the document we want to update. Then we do update values. And our final method, actually this is we are not going to use now but eventually, but our final method here is get user by ID, and this will allow us to get our user model or get the current admin logged in the system. Here we have future user model, get user by ID. We take one parameter called ID and we return a user model. We call here Firebase firestore.collection collection.docid.get.then. After we do get this data, we want to do something. We take the document that we are going to get from this operation and basically do return user model dot from snapshot. We pass this document, which is document snapshot actually, and this is going to return the user model, right? Well, after having your services done, it's not completely over, because you'll have to go to provider, create a new file called auth.dart, which is going to deal with authentication. And here, let me explain it to you guys if you never seen this. You'll have here status. Our app is going to have 4 status: uninitialized, unauthenticated, authenticating, and unauthenticated. Basically, we have here auth provider, which is the name of our provider. User, this is Firebase user variable. Status, we want to see what's the status of the user on our website. By default, we want to have it as uninitialized. And then we have user services, where we just define this class user model. Again, these are private variables, so we need getters to be able to access them. We need some public variables. These are text editing controllers, and this we are going to pass inside of our forms to get the values inside of the forms. We start this with a named constructor called initialized, and when we do initialize, we call this method called fireSetup. And inside fireSetup, we have initialization.then. When our Firebase app is initialized, we are going to get something. But inside of here, we want to do auth. We define this on the constants file. Auth state changes.listen. And here we are calling this method. Every time our state changes, we want to call this method here, and we will see afterwards what this method does. If you just write this, you're going to get an error because this method is not defined yet for you if you're following the video coding. Here we are going to create one method called sign in. To do what? Sign the users in. It's going to return a boolean, future bool actually, and it's asynchronous. Here we call shared preferences. If you don't have this, you just go and define this dependency inside of pubspec.yaml. And in here we do a basic try and catch block, and inside of try we want to change the status of our app to authenticating and notify listeners. And inside of auth, we want to do sign in with email and password, because this is the sign in method we are using. We are passing for the email.text.trim, and we do trim to get rid of any white spaces we might have, because if you don't do this, you may get some errors sometimes. Do the same thing for the password. Then, if our authentication is successful, we want to set our shared preferences ID is equal to value user UID and return true if this works. If something fails, we want to change our status to unauthenticated, notify listeners. We want to print the error and return false. Good. Now we have our second method here, which is going to sign the users up. Again, have everything inside of a try and catch block. Error handling is always important, changing our status to authenticating, notifying listeners. auth create user with password, email and password, very similar to what we have in the sign in method. The only difference is that here inside of the then we want to do shared preferences again, set string id result user.uid, and then we are going to call our user services.create user because we are registering the user here. If everything works as expected, we want to return true. If we have an error, do the same thing we did right above. We have our method to sign the users out, which is important as well. Auth.signout, it's all we need. Change our status to unauthenticated, notify listeners. This is not a very important piece of code. I just like to have it since we said that we are going to return a future. Then we have here clear controller, and this is going to clear our text editing controllers so that all forms are going to be cleared after the user is signed in or signed up. Reload user model, this we're not going to use just now, but when we need to reload our user model, if we think that something changed on our database, we're just going to call user services dot get user by id, and we pass the id. We just define this method inside of our user services class, right? And I do this when I don't want to use streams. Update user data, again we do this to update the user data, and just call user services dot update user data and paste the data we want to update. If you remember, this method now is the one we are calling here on state changes on off state changes we have here. Listen, we are calling this method here on state changed. We want to get the user Firebase, again defining our shared preferences here, getting an instance actually of the shared preferences. If our Firebase user is null, we want to do what? Status change that to unauthenticated. Else, if the Firebase user is not null, meaning that the Firebase user exists, we want to define user. We have this variable right above is equal to Firebase user. Shared preferences id is equal to Firebase user id. User model, again we'll get user by id, passing here user.uid. Then change our status to authenticated and return value. Return value basically is going to return user model, because this method here returns user model, and notify listeners. Finally, we have a method here that is going to validate our fields, and this is just for the email field, but you can do for the password as well if you wish to do so, right? And this is not compulsory as well, because we didn't even implement that inside of our app, so you can just forget about this method here. After you have all of that running, we need to go back to pages, and from pages start implementing all of this code we wrote. So guys, now we will be heading to pages, as I was saying, because we want to see how the code is structured inside of the login and registration files. But even before that, one small thing I want to let you guys know is that you'll need to create another widget inside of the widgets folder called loading, and this is basically our loading animation. And it's a normal stateless widget, call it loading. It's a center. Inside of the center we have a container with a background color of white, and we have this spin kit fading circle here. And if you do not have that dependencies, very easy, you just have to use this here, Flutter spin kit. This will do the job. Now you have a loading animation. The code inside of registration and the login files is easy. It's not that complex. And you'll just have to add this into your login files that you already have from the UI section. We just have to call our provider here. Doing this, create this variable. A provider is equal to provider.ofContext of provider, which is the type of provider we are calling here. And here for the child parameter, probably only have the scaffold here, but we do not want only the scaffold. We want to do this before, basically checking the auth status, and if it is authenticating, we want to show the loading widget. If it's not authenticating, we can show the normal login page. Now you'll scroll down to the text fields. The only thing you have to do here is auth.email. For the controller of the text field, we are going to pass here our email for the email form. And for the password, we are going to do the same thing here. As a controller, we want to pass auth.password. And the final section here is here on this button on press here. Make sure it's a async method. Basically, we're doing if it's not auth provider.signin. Remember that this method is going to return a bool, which is false or true. Basically, we are saying that if the sign-in process is false, if it returns false, means that the sign-in failed. We just want to show a snack bar displaying the text login failed, and this is what this code does. Scaffold manager of context, then show snack bar. This is basically what we are doing here. But if it's true, meaning that it did work, we want to clear our controllers and basically change screen. And this is the method we do, or this is how we change our screen. Basically doing locator navigation service dot global navigate to, and here we have layout route, which will take us to home. The structure for the registration is basically the same. We are doing the same thing we did here. We have here our calling auth provider, and if we are authenticating, we want to show the loading, and we are assigning some values to our controllers here, right? Assigning the values to the controllers here. For the name, username, we're going to do auth provider.name as the controller, here the email, and finally the password. Again, the code inside of the button to sign up is very similar. The only difference is that here we're not calling sign in, but we're calling the sign up method, right? And just to remind you again, you can get this code at this stage in the link in the description, using the link in the description, and you can come and check this video just to understand everything that had happened. Our final part into this whole thing is here inside of our main.dart file, right? Here we have a multi-provider, and the providers we are defining here is the app provider. This you already have, you just have to add this line here to use the auth provider. And then for the child, we have here my app. Inside of my app, we have this, which is normal material app, and these are the properties. But what I want you to focus on is here on generate route. We are going to call this method, which is defined inside of the router start file, and initial route is going to be page controller route. By calling this initial route page controller route, we are going to return this widget here, app page controller. This is going to define which page is going to be returned to the user based on his authentication state, right? So it's basically that. It's a feature builder, has a feature. We're going to take initialization here. If we have an error, we just return here that something went wrong. But if things work the way we expect, we have here our switch statement of provider.status, right? We're going to take care of that. If is initialized, we are going to return loading. If it is unauthenticated or authenticating, we will stay at the login page, and if it is authenticated, we want layout template page. So this is basically that. Actually, this is basically everything that we need here to have our app up and running. And if this was confusing, I'm sorry for that. You just have to go and get the code for this section, and you can continue from that point onwards, right? Thank you guys very much. On the final section, we will actually start coding our project, where we are going to get the total revenue inside of a dashboard and get some data from Firebase. So guys, if you just jumped to this section of the video, great. You already have the source code with the authentication and the basic template setup, which is great. The only thing you have to do is connect that to your own Firebase project by changing the Google services.json file. If you have that, it's perfect. Now we are going to start working actually on how to actually get the total number of orders inside of our database, right? Good. Unfortunately, you have first of all to work with the user mobile app to create the orders so that you can fetch them from our Firebase database, right? And on the first section of this video, I showed you how can you configure your mobile app and how the order is structured on Firebase, how the order collection is structured on Firebase. So I'm not going to go over that again, right? But if you have that working, this is what you have to do. The first thing you'll do is coming here to models, because you do not have that working yet, and create one file called orders, which is this file. And let's start writing some code. First of all, we are going to call our Cloud File Store and create a class called order model. We need few constants: our ID, our description of the order, the card, and this is, you're going to see what's going to fill the card. The user ID basically is the user that created the order. We need a total, which is the total amount spent on the order, the status of that order, if it's completed, if it's pending, if it's canceled, creation date of the order. And then we are going to create some private variables, which basically are the same that we have here above. We have a string ID, description, user ID, the status, creation date, which is an integer, and now we have a total being the total amount of the order as a set. Then we are going to create getters to be able to access these private variables, and this is basically that. And after that, we have our list cart, because cart is going to be a list of elements of cart items actually. Now we are going to create our named constructor called from snapshot. In here we have document snapshot. It's going to take a document snapshot from Firebase, and in here we just have to assign the values we are going to get from Firebase to our private variables here. So it's extremely simple. We have ID is going to be snapshot.data ID. and doing so we'll be getting all of these values from Firebase and assigning them into our variables in here. Good. After having your models, your order model created like that, what we are going to work on next is a service file called orders. So you just have to create a new service file called orders.dart, and inside of this file, which is empty for now, we are going to import Cloudflare store, import our helpers constants, we're going to import our models, and here we have our class, which is called order services. We want to deal with the orders collection, that's why we have this like this. We create one method that it's going to allow us to fetch all of the orders in the database, right? And this is the magic code that's going to do that. Firestore collection get, simple like that. And after we get, inside of this we do get then result, and inside of this we're going to create a list of order models called orders, right? And we're going to create a for loop that's going to iterate throughout our result. So we're going to get one order inside of the results, and add that we're going to do orders.add order model from snapshot order. So we are going to convert this data document snapshot from Firebase into an object of the type order model, and we're going to add that into our orders list here. And to finalize it, we are going to return orders, right? And this is going to do, we are going to use this to fetch our orders from database, Firebase in our case. And the final thing we want to do here is going to providers. Inside of our app provider, this is what you have, but we want to be able to get the total revenue of our store here. So first of all, we're going to import models, orders from models. We are going to import the order services. Here we create our variable order services, we create our variable order model, and we create a double called revenue. By default, it's going to be assigned or equal to 0. And then we here on our named constructor, we do get revenue. We have this error because we didn't define the method yet. So here we have get revenue. And inside get revenue, we are going to call order services dot get all orders, then orders. Again, get all orders is a method that's going to return a list of orders, and here we have that list. So what we are going to do is iterate through that list with our for loop, and we are going to do revenue is equal to revenue plus order dot total. So basically this means that we are going to get the total of each and every order, and we are going to add that to our revenue. And we just don't forget to notify listeners so that the change can be reflected in our UI. I'll do this print, and this is basically to see that our code actually does work, right? Good. Again, this video was just an introduction and a very basic one, and for the following we are going to get all of the data from the database, Firebase on our case, and we are going to start filtering that data inside of our admin dashboard. For example, we can get orders by date, we can filter by any, orders for a specific product, and all of that. Those are things that are possible to do actually. And to run our app, we just do here Flutter run -d cron, and this is going to run our app on our web interface. Again guys, if you have a look here at our total revenue, we'll see that our total revenue is this number here, which is 3,048. This is our total revenue. Of course, we are not showing this on our UI yet, but on our next video we are going to get the total number of products and our revenue and all of that displaying on our UI. On this video I just wanted to set everything up and make sure we are ready to start working on the next one. Please guys, do let me know if you were able to understand this video, if you're facing any types of problems, so that I can try to help you guys out before I do a more complex video on the admin dashboard. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you guys on the next one. Bye.